Hey, what's up, guys? This is Dare to Excel, and today we're going to talk about pivot tables. So, before you get started on your pivot table, you want to get familiar with your source data, all of this right here. So, we already formatted it into a table and added filters into it. So, basically, what this is 3 months of expenses, personal expenses from some person, starting in June and ending in August. So, we separated the data by date, the company the money was spent on, the description of the transaction, was it a product or a service, the account number to pay for the transaction, rather that account was debit or credit card, how often, generally speaking, do you make this purchase, um, the category that the purchase was, electronics, utilities, food, entertainment, the amount of the transaction, and the purchase size as large, medium, or small. So after you're familiar with the data, you want to go ahead and move over here to Insert and just click on Pivot Table. And Excel usually can auto detect what you want to go into a pivot table. As you can see, the dashed lines here and dashed lines down here. And we want it in a new worksheet, so we're going to hit OK. And now we're ready to start our pivot table. So let's go ahead and give this pivot table a name. Click this drop down, and we're going to name it Personal Expenses June through August. Boom. And now we have a name for our pivot table. And now we have to decide what we want to go where. So typically speaking, you want your numerical amount, the thing that you want to break down, to go into values. So what I mean is take amount right here and drag it over to values. And what Excel does by default is it usually sums the data if it's a number. So if we don't want to sum, let's say we want an average transaction or we want the number of transactions, we can click this little drop down over here, go to value field settings, and we can change it to account, and we can hit OK, and that would show us there were 50 transactions. Or we can go to value field settings again and change it to the average. So the average amount spent was $145 per transaction. So we're actually going to go back to that and make it sum again. And as you can see, it's a decimal to 4 places, and that's not really helpful with money. So we're going to click on number format and change it from general to currency, and we want to keep it at 2 decimal places. And we're going to click OK. And now we see the amount that we spent in those 3 months. So we know how much we spent in the 3 months, but we want to break it down further. We want to see per category. So we take the category field and we drag it over here to rows, and now we can see how much was spent in each category: auto, clothes, electronics, entertainment, etc., etc. And you have the choice of going even a step further, and we could even check it out by purchase size, and we have the option to move it by rows. And now we can use this little button here to either expand or contract the data, or we can even move purchase size to columns, and now we can see large, medium, and small all as columns, and then each is summed up here and each is summed up over here as well. But for now, we're going to uncheck that box and move on to making a pivot chart. So as long as you're clicked inside the data, we can go over here to pivot chart, and we can go with a standard bar over here, a sideways bar graph, and we can click OK. So here's the default layout. It's not very good looking, so we can touch it up a bit. Let's get rid of this total up here, so just click on it and then click delete on your keyboard. And get rid of the legend, same thing, click delete on your keyboard. And if we want to get rid of this, all this really does is it lets you choose what you're really trying to look at. So if we wanted to just look at auto, clothes, and electronics, we could do that, and it would update. But we want to look at all categories, so we're going to select all. Okay, and now right click on this, and we want to hide all field buttons on chart. So now we have more space for our data. And we don't really want to see this anymore. We can get rid of that by clicking delete as well, and get rid of that. And let's go ahead and make this a little bit larger. And let's touch up these bars just a little bit. So we can click off of the bars and then just double click on them. And we can go to the paint bucket over here, change the color. Let's go to a medium green here. And we want our bars to be thicker, which would mean the gap width between the bars needs to be smaller. That's how Excel lays it out. So we can make our gap width pretty small, maybe a little smaller than that. All right, close this out. That's what we have so far. We can change the font and such on this by just clicking on this area and just changing from Calibri to maybe Arial, and from 9 font we can go to 11. Now if you look at this graph, you're like, that's great, I can kind of see how much was spent in each category, but I want to know the exact amount. So we just click on the chart again and we go to this plus sign, chart elements, and we want to add data labels. So now we can see the actual amount. And once again, we can change this font. Let's do, for consistency, let's go Arial again and click off. And that's how you make the pivot table, and that's how you make a pivot chart. Thanks for watching.